Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's hearing. We're going to begin today by hearing evidence from a representative of the Office of the Mayor of London. Yes, Ms. Malhotra.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of the panel. Could I please call Mr. David Bellamy?
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Bellamy.
Good morning.
I understand you wish to affirm.
Please.
The words are there on the screen. Would you read them out, please?
I do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much. Now, please sit down and make yourself comfortable. Thank you. Yes, Ms. Malhotra, when you're ready. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Bellamy.
Good morning.
Can I start by thanking you for attending today to give your evidence to the inquiry and for your assistance? Just a few words by way of introduction, if I may. Could I invite you please to keep your voice up so that we can hear you clearly? It also helps not to nod or shake, but to say yes or no, because nods and shakes don't get picked up on the transcript. If any of my questions are unclear, please say so and I will happily rephrase the question. Lastly, if you feel you need a break at any time, please do let us know. Is that all right?
Yes.
I'm going to turn to your statements next. You made 3 statements to the inquiry. They will appear on the screen in front of you. Could I please take you to them now? Your first witness statement, MOL 6025. We can see on the right-hand side it is dated the 28th of September 2018. If we go to page 26 of your first statement, we can see a signature there at the bottom. Is that yours?
Yes.
Could I take you to your second statement? That's MOL 50166. On the right-hand side, we can see it is dated the 28th of June 2019. Now on page 2, we can see a signature there. Is that your signature?
Yes.
Could I take you to your third statement? That's MOL 50180. Again, on the right-hand side, we can see it is dated the 19th of February 2021. There's a signature on page 10. Again, can you confirm that that is yours?
It is.
Have you had an opportunity to read each of your statements recently?
Yes.
Can you confirm that the contents are true to the best of your knowledge?
There are 2 things that I wanted to mention. One was that the exhibit to the first statement of the Strategic Coordination Protocol, the incorrect version was submitted. I believe it was 6.5 when it should have been 7.3, which was in force at the time. The second thing was in the first statement at para 62 and the third statement at para 24, I think the implication could have been made that the K&C Foundation was in some way part of the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea, and I don't believe that to be the case.
Well, thank you for those clarifications. Mr. Bellamy, the focus of my questions today will be the following 4 topics. Firstly, your background, role and responsibilities. Secondly, the Greater London Authority and its roles and responsibility. Thirdly, the role of the Mayor of London in civil emergency. And fourthly, your response and that of the Mayor of London and the GLA in the immediate aftermath of the fire. So, turning first then to your background, if I may. You were at the time of the fire and still are employed by the Greater London Authority, is that right?
Yes.
You have been employed by the Greater London Authority since May 2016, is that correct?
Yes.
Your role at the Greater London Authority is the Mayor of London's Chief of Staff, is that correct?
Yes.
The Mayor of London at the time of the fire and remains today Sadiq Khan, is that so?
Yes.
Your role as Chief of Staff means you are directly responsible to the Mayor for the leadership of his office, advisors, and the coordination of his administration, is that right?
Yes.
Would you agree, Mr. Bellamy, that that puts you at the heart of his administration?
Yes.
You have served as the Mayor of London's Chief of Staff since he was elected the Mayor of London in May 2016, is that so?
Yes.
Before being appointed as Chief of Staff to the Mayor of London in 2016, did you have any experience in civil contingencies and emergency planning?
So I would have had a very small amount of knowledge from some of the preparatory work we took place for the event of the Mayor being elected, but substantively no.
Once you became the Mayor's Chief of Staff, did you receive trainings or briefings about civil contingencies?
So there was there was a briefing book prepared for the incoming mayor, which had a couple of pages in it on resilience. And as I just indicated, I saw a draft of that during the election campaign. And I had a session in the first week, I believe on the first Thursday, with the GLA's city operations lead, who served as our duty officer most of the time, but then to take me through arrangements.
Thank you. I'd like to ask you next about the Greater London Authority and where it sits within the civil resilience framework for London. Is it right the Greater London Authority is a body corporate that is established by statute? That's the Greater London Authority Act of 1999. Is that correct?
Yes.
The Greater London Authority is made up of the Mayor of London and the London Assembly. Is that right?
It is.
Is it the case that the Greater London Authority, the GLA, as I'll refer to it, is the overarching body and the role of the Mayor of London sits within it?
Yes.
Is it right that the functions given to the Greater London Authority are exercised in one of three ways? First, by the Mayor of London on behalf of the GLA. Secondly, by the London Assembly on behalf of the GLA. Or by the Mayor and Assembly on behalf of the GLA?
Yes, and there are schemes of delegation pertaining to the first two of those.
The inquiry has heard evidence from Mr Hetherington, who is now the head of London Resilience, regarding Category 1 and 2 responders. You also deal with this. We don't need to go to it, but you deal with it at paragraph 16 of your first statement. Category 1 responders, if I can just summarise it in this way, are, for example, the emergency services and local authorities. Category 2 responders include transport and utility companies, for example. Can you confirm if the Mayor of London is a Category 1 responder?
I think the authority is, yes.
The Greater London Authority is a Category 1 responder and became a Category 1 responder in 2011, is that right?
I believe so.
For us to better understand how the Greater London Authority fits into the civil resilience framework, it might assist us if you can help us with the historical context. Is it the case that in 2002, following the 9/11 attacks, the London Resilience Team was formed?
I believe so.
At that time, did it form part of the Government Office for London?
Yes, that's my understanding.
The Government Office for London closed in 2010, is that right?
I believe so.
This is when responsibility for resilience in London was devolved from the Government Office for London to the Greater London Authority, is that right?
Yes.
In your first statement, I'd like to take you to it. That's MOL 6025, page 6, paragraph 24, and the final sentence there. You say, paragraph 24, the very last sentence, can you see that? The functions of LRT and responsibility for the LRF were then transferred to the GLA.
Yes.
Does it follow the GLA had oversight of these aspects of resilience in London?
I think it follows that the GLA had its responsibilities as a Category 1 responder, plus those set out in the statutory guidance.
We'll come to what those functions were shortly. On the 1st of February 2015, the functions undertaken by the LRT, the London Resilience Team, on behalf of the Greater London Authority were transferred, and they were transferred to the London Fire Emergency Planning Authority, known as LFEPA. Is that right?
Yes.
The London Fire and Emergency Planning Authority was also a Category 1 responder. Is that right?
Yes.
Employees of the London Resilience Team were transferred from the GLA to LFEPA. Is that the case?
Yes.
and these employees merged with the LFB's own planning department, which, according to Hamish Cameron, who was one of the 3 heads of London Resilience at the time of the fire, was completed in 2016. Is that your understanding?
I think he was one of the deputy heads, but yes, I think there was a merger some time following the transfer.
Upon completion of the merge, the London Resilience Group, which we have heard about from Mr. Hetherington, was formed. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, in your first statement, we have it in front of us, page 6, paragraph 25. You say this: Regulation 7.1 of the CCA, that's the Civil Contingencies Act regulations, provides that in order to facilitate cooperation under Regulation 4, responders may enter into a protocol with each other. Regulation 8 provides that each Category 1 responder may, A, perform a duty under Section 2.1 of the CCA jointly with another responder, make arrangements with another responder for that responder to perform such a duty on behalf of the general Category 1 responder. Is it your understanding that these regulations provide the basis for the GLA's working arrangements?
Yes.
Well, I'd like to look at those arrangements now, if I may. As it was at the time of the fire, I appreciate it has somewhat changed since. Is it correct that the arrangement between the GLA and LFIPA was governed by a protocol?
I believe there was something in place. I'm struggling to remember whether it's a protocol or a memorandum of understanding. Obviously, it was put into effect before my time, but I know
Yes.
there's some document that governs it, yes.
Well, perhaps I can help you, Mr. Bellamy. If we could go to MOL 6042. It is dated the 28th of January 2015, and it is a protocol relating to the discharge of statutory resilience functions by the London Fire and Emergency Planning Authority on behalf of the Greater London Authority. We can see that. Could we go to page 4, please? At H, we can see the purpose of the protocol is set out, and it says this: the purpose of the protocol is to reflect the agreement reached by the parties that the functions currently undertaken by the London Resilience team on behalf of the GLA, comprising the LRF Secretariat role and other resilience functions set out in Schedule 1, the specified functions, shall be carried out by the Fire Authority on the GLA's behalf. This is permitted by the CCR, that's the Civil Contingencies Regulations, for subsection 5, 7 and 8 as set out above. As a Category 1 responder itself, the Fire Authority has the necessary statutory duties to carry out the functions in question. Moving to Schedule 1 on page 28 then, we can see the responsibilities that were transferred to LFIPA are listed here. I'm not going to go through all of them, or in fact any of them, but we can see at the bottom of the page there, it says which of those functions remained with the GLA. And if we can turn over the page, we can see there that these are the responsibilities that were retained by the Greater London Authority. Strategic oversight for resilience, continuance as the home of London Resilience through the facilitation of key meetings on site at the GLA City Hall, such as the London Resilience Forum, and maintaining and improving as necessary the London Prepared website. Mr. Bellamy, can you assist us, please? What is your understanding of strategic oversight for resilience here?
So, as I say, obviously this was before my time. What I interpret that as meaning was that although London Resilience team at LFIPA were carrying out these responsibilities for the GLA, it wasn't transferring the GLA's ultimate responsibility as set out, as a Category 1 responder and as set out in the statutory guidance.
Can you assist us with whether the Greater London Authority have oversight of the London Resilience Group, the London Resilience Forum and the London Resilience Partnership that we have heard about?
So the authority is a member of the partnership and thus a member of the forum. The Mayor obviously appoints the chair of the Resilience Forum, and so there's a potential relationship there. In terms of the London Resilience Group, as now is, clearly they're carrying out responsibilities for LFIPA, as was the local authorities and the GLA, and there's certainly a relationship there between the GLA and London Resilience Group, given all those things.
So could I just clarify then, by virtue of the responsibilities that we've seen, the strategic oversight role for resilience that the Greater London Authority has, does that mean that the Greater London Authority has oversight of the London Resilience Forum?
No, I don't think there's anything in statute that sets out that gives us any greater responsibility than any other Category 1 responder. The guidance does say, it says for the time being, that the Mayor is or appoints the chair of the forum, but I don't think there's actually anything in statute or guidance that gives the GLA some form of strategic oversight for all of resilience in London. It's very much a partnership matter.
So would it be wrong in that case then to suggest that the chair of the London Resilience Forum is the person who would have oversight of the work of the local resilience forum, the London Resilience Forum, forgive me?
So I think you would say they were probably the ultimate person. They have, don't they, a programme board, I think it's called, where key members of the partnership would come together and agree and oversee the work programme, and so having more focus. So I think I would possibly look to that programme board, but clearly the role of the chair is important.
Are you aware of any mechanism or ability of the Mayor of London or the GLA to scrutinise the work of the London Resilience Forum?
So at the time that this was introduced in 2016, when we came into office, I don't think there was any such mechanism. There is one now.
Can you tell us what that mechanism is, please?
So part of the changes we introduced at the GLA, I chair a corporate investment board, which considers all the key decisions before the GLA, before they're submitted to the Mayor. And we have formed a number of subcommittees of that board. One of those is a resilience committee, which is very much focused on the GLA's responsibilities under the CCA, associated guidance, etc. And as part of that, we work with John Hetherington, and the chair of the Resilience Forum, of course, now is the Deputy Mayor for Fire and Resilience, and so we have somebody in the GLA in a way we didn't back then, who very clearly has a lead responsibility around resilience.
So just so I've understood it correctly, the way that the Mayor of London and the Greater London Authority have oversight of the work of the London Resilience Forum is through a board that has, since the fire, been created. Is that right?
Yes, and through the works of the Deputy Mayor.
Before moving on then, Mr Bellamy, and for completeness, we should point out that on the 1st of April of 2018, after the fire, LFIPA was abolished and replaced by the London Fire Commissioner. Is that right?
That's correct.
Is it the case that the responsibilities of LFIPA then transferred to the London Fire Commissioner?
It is.
And can we take it that as a result of that change and replacement, it didn't result in any responsibility change on behalf of the Greater London Authority?
Not as with regard to resilience. There were clearly other things for the authority that changed as a result of that governance change.
Now, the inquiry has heard evidence from Mr Hetherington regarding the structure of the London Resilience arrangements, the London Resilience Partnership, the group, and the London Resilience Forum and its subset structures, including sector panels. Would you agree that these structural arrangements are complex?
I'm not sure I would, no.
Can you assist the inquiry with who has responsibility for creating these structures that sit within the broad term London Resilience? And by that I mean the London Resilience Group, the LRP, the London Resilience Partnership and the London Resilience Forum?
It would be the London Resilience Forum, because these structures are there to, their duty to cooperate and carry out their respective responsibilities under the Act and guidance.
Now, I'd like to move on to the role of the Mayor of London and the Greater London Authority. And that is addressed in Chapter 9 of the Statutory Guidance Emergency Preparedness, which is dated March 2012. If we could go to LFB 30/61171. This is Chapter 9 of the Statutory Guidance Emergency Preparedness. And if we could go to page 11, paragraph 9.22. We can see here it gives us some indication as to what the role of the Mayor of London and the Greater London Authority is. It says, as the elected leader of London's regional government, the Mayor of London plays a full part in supporting the effective implementation of the Act and improving the preparedness of the capital. In particular, the Mayor GLA is closely engaged in high-level discussions and decisions relating to the management of emergencies in London, or an appointed deputy, is currently chair of the LRF, contributes as necessary to the pre-informing of Londoners about the content of emergency plans, the correct behaviour in an emergency and good practice in terms of preparedness in the home as part of initiatives organised both locally and at the UK level. Prepares to play a key role in warning and informing the public during an emergency in London, and takes responsibility for civil protection issues in connection with the management of Parliament and Trafalgar Squares. And if we can go to the next page. The GLA is a Category 1 responder under the Act, and as such has the same responsibilities as other Category 1 responders. However, there are a number of duties that the GLA currently takes in relation to London that are additional to other Category 1 responders. We're just pausing there for a moment before we go on to the next part. The statutory guidance doesn't list the Mayor of London as a Category 1 responder, does it?
It didn't. Well, it says the GLA is, and as we've discussed, the Mayor of London is a part of the GLA and has essentially the executive responsibility there. So for my purposes, the two would be synonymous.
It goes on at 9.25. In particular, the GLA is responsible for the Secretariat of the LRF. The London Resilience Forum, that is responsible for producing and maintaining a Pan-London risk assessment and publishing all or part of it in line with regulations, and is responsible for the planning and exercising of Pan-London emergency arrangements.
Plans.
Forgive me. Plans. I'd like to move on to a document that you make reference to in your statement, and you corrected this morning. It's the Strategic Coordination Protocol. You mentioned this morning that in your statement you referred to version 6.5, but in fact that there was a more up-to-date version that was in place at the time of the fire, and I'd like to take you to that. It's RBK 30/36718. This is version 7.3, we can see, and it's dated February 2017. Can you see that?
Yes.
I'd like to take you to page 25, please. And if we could look at paragraph 2.89 first. It says there, the Mayor of London and the Greater London Authority, in the event of any disruptive incident, it is likely that the Mayor's office will require initial and regular information about the situation. This function will usually be carried out by the London Resilience Group in conjunction with the relevant lead response organisations and by the Mayor's press office. In addition, the Mayor may obtain specific advice at a senior level through the Mayor's advisory group. It then goes on to say the Mayor will collaborate closely with the Strategic Coordinating Group, and where appropriate, central government, the Mayor will also be invited to attend meetings of COBRA. Just pausing there for one moment, if I may, is the Mayor of London's attendance at a COBRA meeting automatic?
No, it's at the ultimate discretion of the Prime Minister, although I think the guidelines now in place, not necessarily at the time, but now in place, recommend to the Prime Minister that be the case.
And what about ministerial meetings, as the type that occurred in response to the Grenfell Tower fire? Was it automatic that the Mayor of London would attend a meeting of that nature?
No, I mean, it's entirely a matter for the ministers convening the meeting.
Going back to 2.8.11, the Mayor of London has a key response role as the voice of London. The role of the Mayor is to support the operational response to an emergency in London by providing a unified statement, a voice for London. It will be the Mayor's role to provide regional information and reassurance throughout the duration of the response and into the initial stages of the recovery phase. This role is complementary to and in support of local responders and operational spokespeople. It then goes on to talk about how that occurs. The first time, Mr. Bellamy, would you agree with me, firstly, that this term, the term Mayor of London, didn't occur in the statutory guidance emergency preparedness that we looked at a moment earlier?
I mean, to say it comes back to what we talked about earlier. The GLA is the corporate body, and then the Mayor of London is essentially the executive arm of the GLA, and so it's a clarification, this document, for people that within the GLA it would be the Mayor of London who is taking on these responsibilities, not the London Assembly.
Thank you. The question I was asking, I'll try it again. The term Voice of London that is used here in the Strategic Coordination Protocol, it doesn't appear in the emergency preparedness document that we looked at, does it?
Not directly, but I think there are responsibilities that the GLA has set out in that guidance that speak to it, but the term doesn't appear.
Can you help us with what your understanding of the term Voice of London means?
Well, I think it's very much what it said there. It's it's speaking to Londoners, and on behalf of London, of course, it ranges much more widely, national and international interest in these things, really to contextualise what is happening and give Londoners the information that they need to understand what has happened and how it might impact on them. I should say, it is clearly distinct, as is said there, from communications from other responders that may be more tightly focused on the scene and those more directly impacted by the incident.
Does the Mayor of London or the GLA have an operational role in an emergency? What's your understanding?
No, with the possible exception of if there were a major incident on GLA land. So obviously you saw in the statutory guidance the mentions of Trafalgar Square and Parliament Square, which the GLA is responsible for, but in the general case I would say no.
I'd like to move on then to events on the 14th of June, if I may. Your colleague, John Paul Graham, was the duty officer that night, is that correct?
Yes.
At the time of the fire, he was the city operations and mayor events lead at the Greater London Authority, is that right?
Major events lead.
Major events. In his statement, I'll take you to it, it's GLA 704. We can see there at paragraph 4, he says this, in this role, so this is paragraph 4, the second line, at the end of the second line, in this role I supported the Mayor, Chief of Staff and mayoral directors by providing high-level support and advice in relation to major incidents and rising tide civil contingency type scenarios. I also led the GLA's involvement in the strategic oversight and delivery of major and high-impact events across London. Is that right?
Yes.
How experienced would you consider he was in relation to dealing with serious incidents and attending strategic coordination group meetings at the time of the fire?
It's hard for me to comment on the level of experience he had as of May 2016 because, of course, I wasn't privy to it. I would say that he was experienced in attending strategic coordinating groups that occurred since then, and had good contacts around Category 1, Category 2 responders, particularly the GLA group, to support him carrying out that role.
He was first made aware of the fire at 3 by the then London Fire Commissioner, is that right?
I believe so.
Both you and the Mayor of London were contacted by Ali Picton, head of the Mayor's private office, and you say in your statement that the Mayor was notified between 3:20 to 3:30. Can you recall what time you were notified?
I believe it's 3:26.
That's very precise.
It's a moment one doesn't forget.
Yes, I'm sure. Could I ask you next about the Strategic Coordination Group Protocol? Well, I've asked you about the Strategic Coordination Group Protocol. I'd like to ask you about the SCG meetings. We can see here, if I could take you to LFB 20123769 and page 7, please. If we could go to page 7. Looking at this diagram at the top of the page, I'm not sure if we can zoom in. Thank you. We can see here that the Greater London Authority, at about the 10 o'clock on this diagram, it is shown as a part of the composition of an SCG. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, the Greater London Authority had its own civil contingencies response plan at the time of the fire, didn't it?
It did.
And I'm going to take you to that document now. It's MOL 6040. We can see there the full title is the Major Incident and Civil Contingencies Response Protocol, the Mayor of London's Gold Cell, and it's dated November 2016. I'm going to refer to it as the Civil Contingencies Plan. If we can go to page 16, please. It sets out there the role of the duty officer. It says the the duty GLA Gold officer needs to be contactable at all times whilst on call. It then goes to say that they need to write down the information known at the time and establishing the reason that they are invoking the Mayor's Gold Cell. Is that what that MGC stands for?
I believe so.
Record the date and time of the notification, start recording details and actions taken, and transfer of the MGC incident log once available. It then goes on to give practical advice as to where meetings should take place. Is it also the role of the GLA duty officer to attend an SCG?
Yes, they normally would do that.
Is it right that Mr. Graham attended the first 3 meetings on the 14th of June, followed by Emma Strain, who is the Assistant Director of External Relations at the Greater London Authority? She attended all other SCGs during the 14th to the 20th of June, save for the 18th, which you yourself attended. Is that right?
That's right, yes.
I'd like to ask you next about the Mayor's Gold Group, if I may. If we can go to page 12 on this document. We can see here at paragraph 4. I'd like to take you to the second paragraph of that because it tells us what the MGC is. It says it's designed to ensure that the Mayor is well informed about any major incident or rising tide situation in London, and so allow him to effectively carry out his role in acting as a spokesperson for the capital, as well as providing civic leadership and reassurance. It will also support them in fulfilling the other responsibilities of the Office of Mayor of London during a crisis, for example, establishing a disaster appeal fund, and then goes on to set out at Appendix A who the members of the Gold Cell are. If we could go to over the next page, to page 13, and look at paragraph 4.2, it tells us when the Mayor's Gold Cell will be activated. We normally invoked once a major incident has been declared by an emergency service in London. Alternatively, there may be occasions where the MGC is activated in response to a rising tide event, such as flu pandemic, severe weather warning, impending widespread industrial action, or anticipated public disorder. And then just finally, if we can go to page 19, please, of this document. We can see here who the permanent members of the Mayor's Gold Cell are. We can see that you are listed as chair. Mr. Graham is listed, as is Miss Strain. Is that right?
Yes.
The Mayor's Gold Cell was activated in the early hours of the morning by Mr. Graham. Is that correct?
It is.
Now, there are a number of passages next of Mr. Graham's witness statement I would like to take you to, starting with page 7. So that's GLA 704. And if we can go to page 7, paragraph 35, please. He says the following about the 14th of June, 6:30 SCG. I recall the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea, RBKC, provided an update during the meeting stating that they were in the process of consolidating rest centres into one centre. RBKC also said that their Gold Group would be meeting at 11 o'clock. I was very shocked to hear that RBKC had not already held a Gold Group and were not planning to do so for another 4.5 hours. RBKC were the responsible local authority dealing with a very serious incident, which clearly required a strategic response from its senior management. He goes on in the next paragraph, paragraph 36, to say this. The fact that the RBKC Gold Group was not scheduled until 11 made me consider they were not necessarily coping with the demands of the incident, even at this early stage. I felt that on one hand, RBKC were giving the impression that they were in control of the situation, for example, referring to arrangements for rest centres, but on the other hand, the timing of their first Gold Group meeting suggested a lack of any strategic direction at RBKC. Now, Mr. Bellamy, was this information relayed to you?
I don't recall whether it was included in the updates from the SCG meeting. I never had the chance really to have much more discussion with Mr. Graham beyond that point because, as you know, he found out his mother died and so obviously came off duty.
He went off duty at 10 o'clock that morning?
Around then, yes.
If these concerns had been relayed to you, do you think there was something that you might have done in response to it?
It's hard to say. Would I definitely have done something? I don't think I can say I definitely would have. It certainly would be a piece of intelligence that and situational awareness that would help me to understand the picture and that perhaps not everything was going as it should be. Well,
let's see if we can help at all. Paragraph 39 of Mr. Graham's statement that we have in front of us still. Let's go over it. Thank you. we can see in the second line, the end of the second line, I do not recall raising my concerns with RBKC's timing for its first Gold Cell meeting, as I was focused on relaying updates from the SCG meeting and organising what the Mayor needed to do that morning. So we know that's what Mr. Graham's position is, that he can't recall at the time he provided this statement whether he relayed that information or not. And I'd just like to explore this with you, Mr. Bellamy, if I may. We know, because you say so in your statement and you've provided us with documentation to support that the Mayor's Gold Cell meeting was held at 8 o'clock on the 14th of June. Is that right?
Yes.
I'd like to take you to MOL 709, please. We can see here that these are actions from the Gold Cell meeting, but at the top of the page, it tells us who was present. And we can see that you chaired that meeting, that Mr. Graham also attended that meeting. Is that right?
Yes.
Was the meeting convened especially for the Grenfell Tower fire?
It was.
Were any concerns about the local authority expressed at this meeting by anyone?
I don't recall that meeting.
Do you consider if anyone present had formed concerns about the local authority at this early stage, this would have been an appropriate forum for raising it?
I would, with the qualification that given the scale of the incident and we're at a very early stage, one wouldn't necessarily expect, everything about the local authority's performance to be perfect. And so again, colleagues would be trying to form, overall situational awareness and I guess see whether there was anything in that context that gave them concern.
On one interpretation, Mr. Bellamy, this could be a missed opportunity. Would you agree with that?
It would be a missed opportunity if you took the RBKC decision not to have a gold group until 11 as a major indicator of their problems.
It's also a fact, isn't it, that these concerns of Mr. Graham that he expresses in his statement are not recorded contemporaneously in a meeting or a note, are they?
So there's. He would have taken a note of the SCG, and I believe that would have been circulated by email. You've got in front of us the only record we have of the Gold Cell meeting.
Well, just going back to the Civil Contingencies Protocol for one moment, if we may, that's MOL 6040. We've looked at it already. If I can take you to page 16. We can see here the responsibilities of the GLA Gold officer, it's a second bullet point, the first bullet point, we can see that write down the information known at the time and establishing the reason that they were invoking the MGC, record the date and time of that notification, and the second bullet point, start recording details and actions taken and transfer to the MGC incident log once available. Mr. Graham compiled a note between 4:30 and 10 a.m, which we can see here. That's MOL 6039. This is the note that he prepared, setting out the information that he was receiving. If we can scroll through it, I hope you can accept from me, Mr. Bellamy, that it doesn't refer to any concerns in this document, does it?
It's very much a factual record of what was happening.
It doesn't record his concerns, does it?
It does not.
Whilst we are on the topic of notes, could I invite you to go back to the Civil Contingencies Protocol, please, MOL 6040 at page 15. We can see here in your own protocol at paragraph 4.4, it refers to record keeping. And it says this, it's just the first paragraph I'm going to read to you. Maintaining an accurate record of key events, actions and decisions, together with their reasons, is paramount, and the MGC Operations Director will appoint a dedicated log keeper. Now, this didn't occur in response to the Grenfell Tower fire. No incident log was kept for the gold cell, is that right?
That's correct.
There are no informal or formal minutes of the MGC meetings either, are there?
Not beyond the action list that you've seen.
The actions we've already looked at, and we can see that there is no record there of any concerns held by Mr. Graham or anyone else for that matter. In fact, the first time that any concerns or any actions arising from concerns about the response are seen on the 16th of June. Would you agree with that?
Well, I would need to read through
Let me
them all,
take you to that.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be on 16th of June. I'm sure what you say is right. I haven't, got all of those actions in front of me to check, but I've no reason to disagree. I assume you're right.
Can you assist us then why no incident log or minutes were kept?
I need to give you a bit of context around this protocol. So when we came into office and you asked me about training and so forth earlier, none of this procedure existed. And so through my initial training, I had some feeling that there needed to be a bit more here than there was, and indeed there was an incident response framework put together in July as at 16 as a response to my concerns. We then had in the autumn a couple of major incidents. So there was the attempted bombing on the Jubilee line, and there was the tram crash in Croydon. And really, out of that experience, it became clear to us that we needed, for the mayor to carry out his responsibility as the voice of London, we needed kind of clearer processes in place. And so the purpose of writing this protocol was to set those out. And at the start, aspects of it were necessarily somewhat aspirational because the resource wasn't there to do it. As we discussed earlier, for instance, Mr. Graham, this side of things was only part of his job. He had other significant responsibilities as well, and that's the resourcing level we had. And so at the time of the fire, we were implementing various points of it. You see that in him keeping the initial record, but we hadn't got to the arrangements where there was anybody trained and in place to act as a log keeper. So that didn't happen.
Would it be fair to say then that you were not familiar with your own civil contingencies procedures at the time?
No, I would say that we weren't in full compliance with them.
Was this a case of knowing what the book said, so to speak, but not having resources to implement it at that stage, or do you think people just overlooked the book? I think
it's a case primarily. I think that there was possibly more to do in terms of training and embedding some of the protocol. I think it's also a factor, as I say, yes, very constrained resources and a period where we'd had the terror attack at Westminster, we'd had the Manchester Arena attack and the consequent move to critical threat level, which had an impact on London, and the London Bridge Borough Market terror attack. And so there was an awful lot that was, we were dealing with responding, and that obviously took away what limited capacity we had from the right. How do we get to the full implementation of our protocol? We now do have 24/7 members of staff who are trained to keep incident logs, and indeed we're currently implementing specialist software to enable them to do so.
Thank you.
You've answered my next question. Could I move on to the 830 SCG? And I'd like to take you to Mr. Graham's statement again. That's GLA 704. At page 8, paragraph 41, he says the following from the SCG meeting at 8:30. I recall explaining at the meeting that the Mayor intended to visit the site given his responsibilities to act as the voice of London. Mr. Holgate seemed very interested in my proposal and insisted that RBKC be involved in any such arrangements. I was very surprised at this, and it seemed again to reinforce RBKC's skewed priorities in the aftermath of the fire. Mr. Holgate seemed to be more preoccupied on this call with minor issues such as the Mayor's proposed visit to the scene and the possible attendance of Nicholas Paget Brown, the leader of RBKC, rather than more important strategic issues regarding the handling of this crisis. Mr. Holgate was insistent that Mr. Paget Brown should be present for any visit by the Mayor. This was an issue I would need to discuss further with colleagues at the GLA. He then says in the next paragraph, as noted in the minutes, the update provided by RBKC focused on rest centres and the provision of referral numbers for displaced people. These are issues which will be relevant for any major incidents, for example, evacuation of residents due to a World War II bomb. However, there did not seem to be any acknowledgement by RBKC of the apparent scale of this incident. RBKC certainly did not ask for any assistance from other partner agencies during this call. The final paragraph that I'd like to take you to from his statement is at paragraph 44 on this page. I remained concerned that RBKC was still lacking any strategic direction for this crisis, particularly given its first Gold Group meeting was not due to start for another 2.5 hours. The next SCG was arranged for 2:00. Can you recall, Mr. Bellamy, if this information was relayed to you?
No, I don't believe it was.
Would you have expected concerns of this nature to have been brought to your attention?
I would. I think the explanation for why follows in Mr. Graham's statement.
We can come on to that. We don't need to turn to it now, but he deals with it in his witness statement and you do too. But for personal reasons, Mr. Graham handed over his GLA duty officer role to Emma Strain. He says at around 10:30 on the 14th of June. I'd like to focus on the events before he handed over his role, if I may. Mr. Graham set up a WhatsApp group, and he deals with this at paragraph 26 of his witness statement. I don't think we need to go to it now, but is it right that there was a WhatsApp group for the Mayor's Gold Group cell?
For the Mayor's Gold cell, yes, it predated the fire.
We can see, if I can take you to, please, GLA 50854. This is a typed transcript of these messages, and it runs to some 68 pages. I'm not going to go through all of those, but could I just highlight some of those messages? So on page 1, we can see the 14th of June, 3:19, John Paul Graham, major incident, fire at Grenfell Tower, W11, 40 pump incident, 60 people missing, there will be mass fatalities. If we can then go to page 5, please. We can see a message here at 5:52. John Paul Graham says Strategic Coordination Group Gold call, and update from LFB Commissioner circulated by email. Can you see that?
Yes.
Next, could I take you to page 7, please? We can see there towards the bottom of the page at 8:32 a message from Mr. John Paul Graham. RBKC are having their first gold meeting will be at 11. Can you see that?
Yes.
And finally, to page 9, please. At 10:05, Mr. Graham says this message, They are doing a systematic search of the building for survivors and have reached the 13th floor. This search is for survivors only, so we can see his last message was at 10:05. Without going through every single one of them, would you accept that there is no reference to concerns on the morning of the 14th of June?
I would, yes.
And do you accept that this would have been an appropriate channel to express any concerns?
It was a possible channel, or yes, it could have been done in the meeting, or he could have come to see me directly.
Have you, since the Grenfell Tower fire, considered your own civil contingencies response procedures in terms of raising concerns about a Category 1 responder, if there were any?
So we are currently engaged in the process of completely rewriting the protocol as, part of a fundamental review, taking on board learnings not only from 2017, but also work on relating to no deal Brexit and COVID-19, which obviously major incidents have been preoccupying us for the last 2 years. So we're engaged in a very major overhaul of those at the moment.
I'd like to ask you next about Miss Catherine Hammond from the Civil Contingency Secretariat. Could I take you to CAB 403021, please? We can see here it's the second email on the page. A small email. Forgive me, sorry. Let's go to the top of the page, 14th of June. It's an email at 8:05. We can see it was addressed to you from Catherine Hammond. And if we can go down, if you can look further down on the 14th of June at 7:45, we can see that you sent an email to Miss Hammond saying, here's the latest update we had, casualty information is confidential. And below that we can see that this was the readout or the overview of the SCG from Mr. Graham, is that right?
Yes, I think some of that will be information he had before the first SCG, but yes, that's the view he had at that time.
If we can go to the transcript of Miss Hammond's evidence, please. It's day 281, page 37, line 3, please. So this is Miss Hammond's evidence to the inquiry last week, and at line 3, if we can see line 3, she's asked about going to her statement, and she goes on to say, forgive me, bear with me one moment, it should be day 281, page 37.
Yes, I can see that.
Forgive me, we may have to come back to that. But in her evidence, I hope you'll accept it from me, that Miss Hammond says that she was in regular contact with you during the response to the Grenfell Tower fire. Would you agree with that?
So, I would agree that she stated it. Indeed, I can see it on my screen, her evidence there. We've seen an email between us, so definitely we were in touch. Mm. I have a recollection of being in a meeting room at the then City Hall on the phone to Miss Hammond. I believe that was during the Grenfell incident, but I'm not certain. It could have been another one. And I would have seen her in the margins of the ministerial meetings as well.
Well, she says that she recalls being in touch with you periodically over a number of days. Doesn't sound to me as though you would disagree with that.
I wouldn't disagree. It's certainly possible.
Yeah.
Was it part of your role and responsibility to update the Civil Contingency Secretariat?
No.
Was this out of convention, or was there a duty on you?
No, this was entirely kind of good partnership working. The formal updates, of course, should have come from the government representative on the SCG, who then would have fed back into the Civil Contingency Secretariat.
Well, why is it that you felt the need to update, Ms Hammond?
Well, clearly it's a very major incident, and we always strive to work closely with the centre of government in such circumstances. And it's always possible that different parties have different additional sources of information, and or different things can get conveyed sometimes perhaps slightly differently or not fully from an SCG. And just then in terms of what parties may be doing about that, it's just good to be in touch.
Did you and the GLA and the Mayor of London's office have a good working relationship with the CCS?
I think it would be a very limited relationship. I think we probably only would deal there in context of incidents, but they would certainly reach out to us if we could help with something. But obviously, normally they would go through DCLG and through them to the Resilience Forum.
I would like to move on to the first ministerial meeting. So we're moving on in time then, please, on the 14th of June to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, which is when the first ministerial meeting took place. The Mayor of London dialed into that first meeting. It was chaired by Mr. Nicholas Hurd, and you attended in person, is that right?
Correct.
I'd like to take you to your statement, please, at page 16. That's MOL 6025, page 16. And paragraph 75, please. You say here, a ministerial meeting was convened by central government at 4 o'clock on the 14th of June 2017. This was not a COBRA meeting. The meeting was chaired by Nick Hurd, Minister of State at the Home Office. The Mayor dialed into the meeting. I attended on his behalf in case there were any problems with the conference call system. The Chief Executive of Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea, RBKC, also dialed into the meeting. The meeting was attended by several ministers. Now, Mr. Bellamy, the panel have heard evidence that, in fact, Mr. Holgate, well, directly from Mr. Holgate himself, that he did not attend this meeting. You say in your statement that he did dial in. Do you think you may be wrong about this?
I think I may be wrong, yes. I've seen other evidence, yes, he didn't.
Would you have expected him to attend this meeting?
Yes.
Do you recall anyone mentioning his absence?
I have very limited recall of that meeting.
Can we take it, therefore, that you didn't raise his absence with anybody?
Not that I recall.
The inquiry has heard evidence from Miss Hammond of the CCS, who we've referred to before, that there are two versions of the ministerial minutes of this meeting. In one version, which I'll take you to now, it's CAB 30-13811. If you can look at the bottom of this page, these are the minutes from the 14th of June. At subsection B, under the heading Immediate Shelter and Medium Term Rehousing, at the bottom of that paragraph, it says, the Mayor of London pressed for further reassurance and requested that contact was made with the local council to ensure that affected individuals are not left without accommodation. Can you see that?
Yes.
And if I can take you to another version of those minutes, at CAB 402714, under that same section, subsection B of the minutes, we can see that that does not appear Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it's not there.
Now, the Mayor of London, in his statement, I'd like to take you to it. It's MOL 50189. And if I could take you to page 8, please. Paragraph 30, where he says this: I remember that at the meeting I repeatedly emphasised the need to consider as an urgent priority the implications of the fire for other people living in high-rise buildings across London and the whole of the country. It was clear that people living in those buildings would be feeling very anxious and distressed, and an urgent investigation was needed so that some reassurance could be provided. A swift assessment of how many similar blocks that there were across the country needed to be made, given that many had been refurbished or recladded. I urged the importance of this being coordinated from central government, given that it was a national issue, and stated that a clear message from government that this was underway was vital. He then goes on to say in the next paragraph of his statement at paragraph 31, I have seen a note of the meeting of the 14th of June, which has been exhibited to the witness statement of Miss Catherine Hammond of the Cabinet Office and has been disclosed to the inquiry. He then gives the URN. As far as I can remember, this note accurately reflects the discussion at the meeting. I'd like to see if we can explore this a little bit furthermore, because in his statement it's not clear whether the Mayor of London has seen the minutes where comment is attributed to him, but I would like to take you to a handwritten note now that we have been provided, and this is a note that the Mayor of London, his head of private office, Ali Picton, produced following a debrief of this meeting, and we can see that at MOL 60181. This is the handwritten note, and we can see there in the middle of the page SK and Nick Hurd. Concern about other buildings and residents in tall blocks, rescue and recovery on the ground, and you might have to assist us with what that says.
Close contact LFB. I imagine that's the Mayor saying that he was in close contact with the fire brigade.
And then this is a priority, but need to know cause to reassure people in other blocks. Is that right?
Yes.
Whilst we can see rescue and recovery, and this is a priority, there doesn't appear to be, in this note at least, any mention of concerns regarding the response. Would you agree with that?
Not in that note, no. Although it does talk about rescue and recovery on the ground as being a priority, but it doesn't give any specific concerns.
Now, the inquiry has heard about the GLA Oversight Committee meetings, and we will come to those again in due course. But for now, in your evidence to the Oversight Committee on the 23rd of November 2017, I can take you to the transcript, that's MOL 6017. We can see here, this is a transcript of that meeting where you gave evidence, as well as Mr. Baradell and others. And if I could take you, please, to page 7 of this transcript. At the bottom of page 7, we have a record of what you were saying. And towards the bottom of it, you say this. If we can go over to the next page, please. At the top of that page, you say, it is fair to say that on the Wednesday, there were a lot of people getting their heads around things. The Mayor at the meeting on Wednesday asked a lot of questions and was pushing for a lot of action. Are you referring here to the ministerial meeting at 4 o'clock on the 14th of June?
I was, yes.
Before I actually ask you a question about that meeting and what the Mayor of London may or may not have said, could I take you to your note of that meeting? It's at MOL 50151. Such as it is this your note of that ministerial meeting?
It is very brief because the Mayor and colleagues were on the call, so I didn't need to note much down.
Can you assist with what questions and actions the Mayor of London raised at that meeting at 4 o'clock on the 14th of June?
So at this distance, my recollection is very much what I said to the Oversight Committee, that the Mayor, was really, raising a number of points and pressing, for things to be done repeatedly. I note that there were, two things in the draft minutes. I'm sure he did raise those. I've no doubt he raised other things. I can't, I'm afraid, remember the specifics. And I'm afraid I never saw those minutes, either the draft version or the final version, until I was preparing to give evidence to the inquiry. I believe they weren't circulated at the time.
Well, sir, I'm about to move on. Perhaps now is a convenient moment for a break.
Does it suit you?
Yes, it does.
Right. Well, Mr. Bellamy, we do have a break during the morning, and this is a good time to take it. So we'll stop there. We'll resume at 25 to 12, please. Mm-hmm. And I have to ask you, please, not to talk to anyone about your evidence or anything relating to it while you're out of the room.
Of course.
All right? Thank you very much. Would you go with the usher, please? Thank you very much. 25 to 12. Thank you. Would you ask Mr. Bellamy to come back in, please? Okay. Right, Mr. Bellamy, you ready to carry on?
I am, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Ms. Malhotra?
Well, Mr. Bellamy, we talked about events in the afternoon of the 14th of June. I'd like now to turn to the evening of the 14th of June. At 6:15, the Mayor spoke with the Secretary of State for DCLG, and we can see a readout of this call, which was circulated at 6:56. I'll take you to that readout. It's at CLG 403011. We can see here, section I want to take you to. Hi all, please find a quick readout of the Secretary of State call with the Mayor of London below. Sadiq Khan dialed into the first ministerial meeting chaired by Nick Hurd this afternoon, and it goes on to say that he was impressed with the government's response so far. There's then a discussion about rehousing and the fire brigade, where the Mayor of London flagged whether there was enough counselling facilities for the firefighters. Were you on this call?
No.
It doesn't appear as though you were copied into this readout either, is that right?
That's a government readout, so no.
This was an internal DCLG email, is that correct?
Yes.
Are you able to say what impressed the Mayor of London about central government response at that stage? Was there any discussion that he had with you?
No.
Well, I'd like to take you to the Mayor of London's statement, please. That's MOL 50189, and take you to page 8. And if we can look at paragraph 32, the Mayor of London says this: I remember that I spoke to Sajid Javid at 6:15 on the 14th of June 2017, as I had visited the Grenfell Tower area earlier that day. Our discussion first reflected my experiences during that visit and my deep concern about the situation faced by the bereaved survivors and others in the local community. Having seen the chaos on the ground, I recall I expressed the need for a single point of contact and advice for the local community, and for visible, if we can go over the page, for visible support from local and national government. I recall suggesting that a one-stop shop for advice and support be put in place to help those who were seeking support, who were desperately seeking support. Could I next take you to a note? That's MOL 50182, please. This is a note by Ali Picton, and we can see at the towards the bottom of the page it says SJ, I think that is, single point access, phone line established, one-stop shop, visible support on ground, follow up on list of cladding buildings in London, London councils can help. Is that MH? Can you just?
Yeah, that will be MHCLG, yes.
Although at the time, I believe they weren't called MHCLG, they were DCLG at the time of the fire. It says legal support and assistance and need for public inquiry. Bearing in mind the Mayor of London's observations in his statement there, can you assist us with what your assessment of the response was at that stage?
Sorry, the response in general?
The response in general, the
yes.
local authority response.
Well, I think the important thing to say is, and you see it through the SCG minutes, you see it through the ministerial meeting minutes, is the wide range of issues that were being dealt with. Obviously, we saw just before the break references, underground, the safety of the underground, the stability of the tower, the A40, the local schools. The list went on, didn't it? And so there was a very wide range of issues being dealt with. I don't think the Mayor may have picked up some specifics from his visit that day, although that visit was largely focused on emergency services. I do believe he popped in briefly to a community centre. But I think really we didn't have enough visibility on the local authority response for us to have really been able to say yes, it's good or it's not good. We only really had the assurances that RBKC provided at the SCG meetings.
Well, could I ask you this then, Mr. Bellamy? Given your role as given the Mayor of London's role as you accept as a Category 1 responder and the Greater London Authority's role as a Category 1 responder, should you have had better visibility of what was happening on the ground?
So I think the point about Category 1 responders is around the duty to cooperate. It doesn't give the right to get into the internal workings of any one partner. Whilst accepting that it's a strategic coordinating group, it clearly would have been helpful if any partner there had the ability, whilst recognising the wide range of issues the SCG was dealing with, to question a bit more RBKC about what they said.
Your statement sets out the contact that you or the Mayor of London had with senior central figures in central government. What contact did you have with the local authority on the 14th of June?
Personally, I didn't have any.
Can you assist us with what contact the Mayor of London had with the local authority on the 14th of June?
So, as I think he said in his statement, he spoke to the then leader of the council when he was on the way there. There was an offer for the leader to join the Mayor in person on the Mayor's visit, but the leader, I believe, wasn't able to take that up.
Did you have any contact with the duty LLAG or John Barradell, the chair of the LAP, on the 14th of June?
No.
In retrospect, do you consider that you or the Mayor of London should have?
I think, had we had awareness of the issues that there were, then clearly we would have taken action of that sort, as indeed I did the following day.
I'd like to ask you about that visit that you've referred to on the 15th of June. At 2 p.m, the Mayor visited the site, is that correct?
So I referred to the visit on the 14th.
Forgive me, there was a visit on the 14th. I'd like to ask you about the one on the 15th of June.
Okay.
And is it right that the Mayor visited the site at 2 p.m. on the 15th?
I couldn't comment on the exact time, I wasn't there.
So you didn't attend with the Mayor?
No.
We can see here an email at LFB 30612233. This is an email from John Hetherington, Deputy Head of London Resilience at the time, on the 15th of June at 11 minutes past 6 in the evening. He says, "Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Just had a chat with the MPS Gold following his private call with Nicholas. The Mayor was mobbed on the scene earlier. There is a community meeting later today, which is showing concerns of civil unrest. He is therefore not satisfied anymore to be handing over to recovery to tomorrow." I'd like to take you to the Mayor of London's statement again, please. That's MOL 50189. And if I could take you to page 11, please, of his statement. We can see there at the bottom of the page on paragraph 46, he says this of his visit. During this visit, the full scale of the tragedy was starting to become clear, and some members of the community were clearly very upset, completely understandably. People were angry and wanted answers for someone in a position of authority, so my visit drew a large crowd. I remember someone threw a bottle of water at me as I passed by. I had not made plans to visit the Notting Hill Methodist Church following my visit to the centre, as I spent time speaking with those affected. He then goes on to say, during my visit, this is at paragraph 48, During my visit to the church, a large crowd congregated outside the front entrance. Like the Prime Minister and several other senior politicians, I have a police protection team. I was advised by my security team to exit the church via the back entrance, but I felt very strongly that it was my duty as mayor to listen to the community's concerns firsthand. So I left via the front door, and the visit was extended for around another hour so that I could listen to those affected. Are you able to assist us with whether, in fact, the Mayor of London was mobbed on his visit in the afternoon of the 15th of June?
I don't care for the word mobbed. Here was a community in grief that had clearly been let down before, during and after the fire. And I think it's entirely right that they would want to speak to somebody in a position of responsibility and authority about what happened.
I'd like to try and follow matters as chronologically as possible. Could I invite you to look at this? MOL 50183. We can see here this is a transcript of media interviews that were given by the Mayor of London on the 14th and 15th of June. At page 14, the very bottom of the page, it says this. Important, the council provides housing to those who have lost it. The guidance to all those who want to help, who are turning up with van loads of goods. I sense the frustration from volunteers at...
Sorry, can I just pause you? I'm not seeing that on screen.
Right, can we go back a bit, please?
And can we just get it on screen and then... Right, so I think we maybe start in the middle of a paragraph, so that's why I lost you.
It's page 14, can you see that?
So what's the first few words of where you're starting, and then I can follow?
At the very bottom of that page, the 3 lines up from the bottom, right at the very end, important, the council provides housing.
Yeah, okay,
Can you see that now?
I'm with you now, let's run from there.
Important, the council provides housing to those who have lost it and guidance to all those who want to help, who are turning up with van loads of goods. I sense the frustration from volunteers at the Westway, at things not being properly coordinated. So important, we will signpost people at City Hall to where they need to go. We can see here in what the Mayor is saying that there were concerns with the response. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
When did you first become aware of concerns with the local authority response?
So I think I became aware, I did ask before, so I went to the ministerial meeting that Joe will come on to, which I think was at 3:30, and I did ask before I went to that was there any information yet from the Mayor's visit, but at that point there wasn't. It's possible before I went I saw some of the scenes of the Mayor's visit on the television. But I think I really formed concerns about RBKC's response at the ministerial meeting, and then when I returned to City Hall after it.
So are you able to say when you had concerns? Was it before the ministerial meeting, if I've understood you correctly?
No, I don't believe I had any significant concerns before the ministerial meeting, but if I'd seen the TV footage or colleagues were made aware of what had gone on the Mayor's visit, then clearly I would have seen that things were not as they should be.
Well, you've mentioned that second ministerial meeting at 3:30 on the 15th of June. I'd like to turn to that now. You attended that meeting on behalf of the Mayor of London, is that right?
Correct.
And that meeting was attended by Nicholas Holgate, then the Chief Executive to the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea, is that right?
I believe so, yes.
Can you tell us what impression you formed of Mr. Holgate at that meeting?
I'll be honest, I don't really have much direct recollection of that meeting and not of Mr. Holgate. I just remember coming away with a real sense of unhappiness and concern about the response, and that there was something that was really not right.
Was this your first interaction with Mr. Holgate? Was this the first time you'd seen him?
since the beginning of, I think he dialed in, so I didn't see him. I think it's the first interaction that I would have had with him since the fire. I had met him previously before the fire.
I'd like to take you to paragraph 79 of your first witness statement, please. That's MO, yeah. Paragraph 79. You say this: a second ministerial meeting took place. You then go on to say in the second line, following the meeting, I was sufficiently concerned at the lack of progress being made with the recovery operation that on my return to City Hall, I telephoned John Barradell, Chief Executive of the City of London Corporation and Chair of the Local Authority Panel, LAP, to inquire about the progress of the recovery operation from his standpoint and discuss what action could most helpfully be taken. Are you able to assist us with what specifically concerned you at this point in time? So during that ministerial meeting at 3:30, which started at 3:30 on the 15th of June.
So, firstly, I think my concern was about, you're probably described as response and recovery. As we know, the kind of boundary between the two isn't a clear one all times. I don't think it was really specifics. It was, it was what came out of the meeting. I've seen some of the evidence from other people who were at that meeting. It was also as I returned to City Hall, before I could get to my desk, I was met by colleagues who said, look, David, RBKC are really just it's failing, it's just not working, which I think they judged both from the mayor's visit and also contact they had received from other, probably political figures in that area of London who would have passed on information. And yes, I think we weren't really clear on precisely what the failings were. We could just see that things were really not working and something needed to be done about it.
Well, I'd like to next try and piece together as best we can the sequence of events that then followed this meeting. Could I take you to GLA 50854, please? We've looked at it before. This is the transcript of the WhatsApp messages between the Mayor's Gold Group. Could I take you to page 26? I'd just like to look and read through some of these exchanges that we can see here, starting at the top of the page. It's the 15th of June and 1722. Ms. Strain says, I've reached out through a number of routes, RBKC, messaging, donations, volunteers, support, including contacting Chief Exec's office. We'll keep on it, but no response so far. We can then see a little later at 5:31, one of your colleagues says, is there a way we can get across that RBKC are totally out of their depth? Jeff, should we speak with London Council's resilience lead? They need a lot of help. Then goes on, DB, is that you?
Yes.
Going to talk to John Barradell. And then it says at 5:39, John online to Nick Holgate, CEO RBKC right now. Aware of problems, will call back shortly. Just pausing there, this may help us with the sequence of events and timing, but is it right that you were talking to Mr. Holgate at this stage?
No. I asked my executive assistant to get me John Barradell on the phone, and so I walked back in the office. As I said, colleagues relayed concerns, which in general terms, which chimed with what I felt coming out of the ministerial meeting. So as I asked my assistant to get John Barradell on the phone, John came to the phone and said essentially he was on the other line with Nicholas Holgate, and was aware there were some problems and that he would call me back.
So is it the case that you didn't speak directly with Mr. Holgate?
Correct.
John Barradell, as we've seen in the passage that I referred you to your statement before, you say that he was the Chief Executive of the City of London Corporation and Chair of the Local Authority Panel, which the inquiry has heard about what that is. He had not been involved in any strategic coordination group meetings at this point, had he?
No.
He had not been involved in the ministerial meetings, had he?
No.
At this stage, the response was being led by the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea, is that correct?
The local authority duties, yes.
When giving evidence to the GLA Oversight Committee, and I'll take you to that transcript now, it's MOL 6017, at page 37. You say this: when I came out of the ministerial meeting on the Thursday afternoon, it was abundantly clear, accepting things are always going to be difficult on the first day after the incident for obvious reasons, that the response and the beginnings of the recovery operation were not what they needed to be. Immediately when I came back to City Hall, I rang John and said, "What is going on? What are you doing about it?" Discussions were underway, as had been earlier outlined, which led to the invocation of mutual aid.
I'm sorry, what the transcript says, what are you going to do about it, not what are you doing about it?
What are you going to do? Forgive me. I'd like to ask you about this passage, discussions are underway. Can you explain what you meant by that?
Okay, discussions were... I think whether that's an error in the transcript or whether I misspoke at the time, that should say discussions were already underway. And as I say, Mr. Barradell was on the phone with Mr. Holgate and others when I called him.
So it's not the case that there had been discussions ongoing prior to your call to Mr. Barradell?
Not involving me.
Were you aware that London Resilience had had a call with Mr. Holgate the day before, on the 14th of June?
No.
Do you consider your responsibility and that of the Mayor of London that is information that maybe you ought to have been aware of?
I'm not sure I do. Clearly, it was a internal local authority matter in terms of their response, and it comes back to the Civil Contingencies Act concept of this being a partnership and each partner conducting their own legal responsibilities. Nobody thought to say, okay, yes, we have got some concerns perhaps at this point, and we should talk to the mayor or his chief of staff about it. It's very much, I think, local authorities saying, well, what concerns we've got, what can we do about it, which of course is the point of the mutual aid system that they have.
What was your purpose in speaking to Mr. Barradell?
My purpose in speaking to him was that it had become clear to us that the response was, very far from what it needed to be, and something needed to be done, but it wasn't immediately apparent to me what the options available, indeed whether there were any options available to address the matter.
I'd like to take you to an email, please. It's at GOL 401473, please. It's the second email at 7:50, which is towards the bottom of the page. It's an email from Mr. Holgate to the London Resilience Group and the LLAG oncoming and offgoing duty officers, where Mr. Holgate says this: I do not yet think LLAG needs to gear up. Can you see that?
I can.
It then goes up the next email at 8:15, Just for information, we have been in touch with both Mr. Holgate, Nicholas Holgate, Chris Naylor as oncoming LLAG, and Andrew Blake Herbert as offgoing LLAG. All are content at the moment that RBKC retain the lead at this point. And then the top of that email chain, which we can see, Mark Sawyer responds at 8:18 on the 14th of June. Looks like job done. Cheers. Can you see that?
I can see it.
Can you assist us with what your understanding of LLAG arrangements were at the time of the fire?
At the time of the fire, it's hard for me. So as we touched earlier, at the beginning of January 2016, I started clearly with no knowledge about resilience. Today, I have the knowledge I have, and clearly I've gone through a process. It's very hard to look back and say, well, right, exactly, what did I know at that time? Clearly, I didn't at that time know enough about LLAG as an internal local authorities process for me to kind of look at exploring that. Instead, as we've discussed, I went to Mr. Baradell when I realised there were problems.
So can you assist us with what your understanding of LLAG arrangements were?
So I think that's just what I answered previously.
Did you understand the activation of LLAG to mean that one local authority would take over a response?
As I say, I'm not clear on what I understood, if I knew of it at all, about LLG at the time. I don't think I had a comprehensive understanding, as clearly the inquiry itself has had some debate about the finer points of this.
Do you consider that you ought to have had?
No, because it's an internal matter to the local authority response.
The fact that you contacted John Baradell might suggest that you thought that he had some active role to play. Was that the case?
No, I contacted him because I knew him. I knew he was the deputy chair of the Resilience Forum. Clearly was the kind of local authority leader on resilience. We got a problem. I didn't know whether he knew about the problem or not, but it's very clear there was a problem, that something needed to be done. So I wished to discuss with him what we could do about matters.
Yeah, thank you.
As I say, dealing with things as chronologically as best we can, can you tell us what was discussed in your call with Mr. Baradell?
So that first call was very brief because he was on the other line to Nicholas Holgate, and he basically, so I said, look, John, we've got paraphrasing, we've got a problem here. He acknowledged that, said he was on the other call at the moment with Nicholas Holgate, and that he'd ring me back when that, after that call.
I'd like to take you to your handwritten note of your conversation with Mr. Baradell. That's MOL 50175. Was there a time, you say that you were on the phone to him, he was on the line to Mr. Holgate. Was there an occasion when you spoke to him again?
Yes, so firstly apologising for getting his surname wrong in that note. What the WhatsApps show is that call must have concluded just before 1849, because then I informed colleagues at that time via WhatsApp of the outcome of the conversation. So it clearly would have been about 6:45.
We'll come to those WhatsApp conversations in a moment. Just looking at this note, it says with Eleanor Kelly. Was Miss Kelly in the room with Mr. Baradell when you were having a conversation with him?
That's my understanding, yes.
Are you able to assist with why she was there?
So I now know that Ms. Kelly was the deputy chair of the local authorities panel, and so worked closely with Mr. Baradell, and clearly they then, that's been demonstrated both in the subsequent Grenfell response, further to this, also in terms of the no-deal Brexit response and the COVID-19 response, where they worked very closely together in the SCG arrangements we established.
We know that, well, let me ask you this. At the time of your call with Mr. Baradell, when Eleanor Kelly was present, can you tell us whether you had expressed a view to him about what you thought should be happening in the response?
No, I don't believe I did. As I say, I don't think I was cited on the specifics of what the issues were, just that there were issues, and the question really was what could be done so that they were properly gripped and addressed.
It may be obvious and you may have answered this, but what was it that you were asking him to do?
So, as I say, when I rang him just after 5:30, was because I could see that we had a real issue. I did not know what our options were to address that issue. And so clearly, as a experienced person who would understand all that, I wanted to discuss that with him in order that hopefully we could agree on the most appropriate course of action.
Did he suggest a course of action to you?
So the first call, he just said, "I'm talking to Nicholas Holgate, I'll call you back." The second call, as you can see here, he just informed me of what course of action they were taking.
Is that the note where it says K&C involved? You might have to assist me with your handwriting, I'm afraid.
Apologies, it's not great at the best of times. K&C invoked for chief exec cover and other support. Another chief exec as local authority gold, and says formally start. I assume I just didn't manage to keep up. Presumably I was saying formally start tomorrow at some point. And then JB, and I think that's supposed to be EK, to support them, plus Mary from Hounslow, so that's Mary Hartley, who was at the time the Chief Executive of London Borough of Hounslow, and Doug, who's Patterson, I think, who at the time was Chief Executive of London Borough of Bromley. And then it says K&C will do community resilience and cohesion, housing and displaced, presumably a reference to those in the walks. There's a reference, I think that is London, reference to mortuary. And then the last note's rather incomplete. External chief executive oversight with K&C director on, and then it stops.
So what was your understanding, now your memory's been refreshed by this note, of what was going to happen after that call?
So my understanding was that another chief executive was going in to K&C alongside Mr. Holgate to help with the coordination of matters.
So to work alongside, was that your understanding?
Yes.
Well, when was your understanding that would take place?
I can't remember if there's anything in the WhatsApp history that, as you say, we might come to that helps with that. As you can see, I sort of formally started, and I didn't note down. So I think I don't really have a strong memory. It's probably been too polluted by everything that we've read subsequently.
Well, we can come to those WhatsApp exchanges in a moment. Mm-hmm. I just want to ask you this about Miss Hammond. We know that you were in contact with her. Did you express to Mr. Baradell, or had expressed to you at that point, that there was pressure from central government for action on the response to take place?
Not that I recall. I imagine at that point that the government would still have been digesting the ministerial meeting in the same way that we were.
So can you recall if you had received any pressure from central government yourself at that stage to do something about the response?
I've absolutely no recollection of receiving any pressure from central government. I'm confident I didn't.
Did you have any role or play any part in Mr. Baradell stepping in, or was it that matters were already in train before you spoke to him?
So do you mean in terms of stepping in terms of his intervention with Mr. Holgate, or do you mean in terms of stepping in terms of actually kind of being there in K&C?
Stepping in to assist Mr. Holgate, as we can see in this note.
So as we can see in this note, the note says another chief executive as local authority gold, with John Baradell and Eleanor Kelly supporting that other chief executive. So at that stage, I did not know, and indeed I think that shows when we'll come on to Friday morning, I didn't know that it was Mr. Baradell who was going to take on that role.
I'd like to take you to Catherine Hammond's evidence, please. That's day 28174 and line 17. Let's hope I can see it this time.
Yeah.
We can see here Miss Hammond is asked about what she says in her witness statement. And I'll just take you to the start of the question that she's asked to give it some context. In light of what you say there, referring back to her witness statement, was it your understanding of the LLAG arrangements that LLAG would assume the same executive authority and powers vested in the relevant chief executive, i.e. Nick Holgate? And she says, yes, I assumed that Mr. Baradell was acting on behalf of Mr. Holgate in respect of this area of his responsibilities. That was my understanding at the time. What was the basis of that understanding? I think the way I learned about this was through the conversation with Mr. Bellamy, so that that would be the basis. Can you remember what he said to you? Not in precise words, I'm afraid. Do you agree with Miss Hammond in her recollection of a conversation with you?
So I don't have, I mean, I think this is just so I'm clear, going back to line 1 and 2. So this is Friday morning, is it? Just so we're clear. I don't have a recollection of that conversation. I'm quite prepared to believe that it happened. I think what we see from the, and you may be coming to this, so apologies, from the note of the Gold Cell meeting, yeah, it's still at 8:30 in the morning, 9 in the morning, wherever the Gold Cell meeting was. It still wasn't clear at that point who was taking on the LA Gold responsibilities, but that was reported to the 11 a.m. SCG, and so that was our then duty officer reported that via the WhatsApp conversation at, I believe, 11:25.
Well, I believe Miss Hammond is speaking about a conversation with you on the 15th of June. Can you assist us with whether you had a conversation with her on the 15th?
Well, I may or may not have done, but that clearly was before there was any suggestion of John Baradell getting involved. I think what you're showing me on screen at the moment is about the morning of the 16th.
So you don't recall having a conversation with Miss Hammond on the 15th of June where you said to her that Mr. Bellamy would be acting on behalf of Mr. Holgate in respect of those responsibilities?
So firstly, I'm Mr. Bellamy, so no. Secondly, as I say, that only happened on Friday the 16th. And thirdly, as I said earlier, I may well have had conversations with Catherine Hammond throughout this matter. I'm perfectly prepared to believe I did. I just don't have any specific recollection of them, I'm afraid.
You say in your witness statement, we don't need to turn to it now, that you were reassured by your conversation with Mr. Baradell, who told you RBKC were planning to invoke mutual aid that evening. Mm-hmm. That's the evening of the 15th of June. When you spoke with Mr. Baradell, what did you understand invoke mutual aid to mean?
I understood it to mean that appropriate colleagues from wider London local government would be getting involved in assisting with the response and providing perhaps the capacity and experience that it appeared from the failings RBKC were lacking.
I'd like to take you to those WhatsApp messages, a transcript of them. That's GLA 50854, please. And if we can go to page 26. We had got up to the stage of the conversation, of the message, at 5:39. John on the line to Nick Holgate, CEO, RBKC right now, aware of problems, will call back shortly. Can you assist? And I appreciate this message was not written by you, but what were those problems that are suggested here?
So Dr. Bowes sat in the same office as me and was essentially, listening to my conversation, or heard my immediate summary as I put the phone down. And what he's saying there is that John Barradell was on the line to Nicholas Holgate at that time, as I spoke to John Barradell, that John was aware that there were problems and that John would call me back shortly.
We can move forward in time to the message at 6:49 that you've already referred to. You right here spoke to John Barradell. We know that you mean Mr. Barradell. A LA chief exec is being assigned to share the load. Was that your understanding at the time?
Yes, that's my shorthand for the note of the meeting that you've already seen. Your evidence was that you didn't know who that chief executive was going to be. Correct.
Can people tell me what K&C issues we are seeing, and I will feed back to John as they can be picked up.
So they can be picked up.
And then your colleague then responds back at 6:52. That's really helpful. I know Emma was aware of some issues. Tony Davenish, PA, came upstairs and said H&F was struggling to make contact and help. Is that Hammersmith and Fulham?
Yeah, Hammersmith and Fulham Council, yes, it would have been. So Mr. Devenish, for your information, was and is the London Assembly member for Central West London, which includes both Hammersmith and Fulham and Kensington and Chelsea.
Were there issues with getting hold of RBKC, as we can see is suggested here?
I believe there were. I think that's shown throughout the evidence, including evidence from my GLA colleagues.
And we can then see that Ms Strain sends a message about some of the concerns of the team, and we can see, and I can take you to that in due course, the email that she then sends. I just want to ask you this before we move away from this topic of the conversation with Mr. Barradell. Given that the Mayor of London, you've been referred to his witness statement and what he says about his observations on the second visit that he had on the 15th of June, the concerns that you had on the 15th of June following the ministerial meeting, why was it, were you satisfied, Mr. Bellamy, to wait for information about what chief executive would be in a supporting role? Were you satisfied with the response that you received?
So I was satisfied that local authorities in London were taking what they considered to be appropriate action. I considered that Mr. Barradell, as clearly a local authority chief executive of some experience, particularly with regard to resilience, would have a far better understanding than me of what was required to be done, and doubtless from his discussions with Mr. Holgate, what some of the issues may be. And so, I was, satisfied that, action was being taken that Mr. Barradell considered to be appropriate.
I asked you about an email earlier sent by Mr. Sawyer where he says job done. I'd just like to take you to one more email exchange. That's LFB 3061229, please. Now, this is an email again from Mr. Hetherington sent to his London Resilience Group colleagues. I appreciate you weren't on this email. It's not one that was copied to you. But what he says in that second paragraph, towards the bottom, 3 lines up from the bottom of the second paragraph, I have made the point to Mark that they should look to consume this in everyday business as far as possible so that we don't get drawn into longer term support. Mark agreed with this. I think we will need to do something, but I think if possible, some advice early days to bring the right people together, then let them get on with it. Was there an impression, or did you form the impression that there was reluctance on the part of the LLAG and Mr. Mark Sawyer and London Resilience to get involved in helping RBKC?
So, I mean, I had no knowledge of this at the time. That's not how I interpret this email at all. I interpret this email as being from London Resilience Group, and London Resilience Group were, saying so that we don't get drawn into a long-term support. And that would reflect that London Resilience have always got to be ready for, as events sadly showed, the next incident that will happen. They still would be clearly would have some involvement here. They still had some involvement in matters related to the London Bridge and Borough Market terror attacks, which were 11 days I think prior to Grenfell fire. And so I think what I see there is London Resilience Group saying, well, we need, RBKC to set themselves up to handle what is clearly going to be an ongoing situation.
Could I invite you to look at your first witness statement at paragraph 79, please? It's the very bottom of paragraph 79. You say, I was reassured by this. By that, it means, let me read up the first few lines. I was informed by Mr. Barradell that he was currently on a separate call with RBKC, who had informed him that they were planning to invoke mutual aid that evening. I was reassured by this. However, it did not, in fact, take place until the following day.
So I think what that is doing is, so I'm aware of the inquiries, debates and looking into this. I have to say, I find it surprising that, I don't pretend to understand the legalities of the gold resolution between local authorities. I find it surprising that a situation in which a chief executive can incur expenditure on behalf of another authority is able to occur without some sort of written statement, although I suppose one can imagine circumstances where it's just not possible to obtain that. And I think what we see there is, as I think with the inquiries teased out, is the kind of difference between the start of mutual aid and then John Barradell himself taking a more leading role in terms of directing the response and recovery operation.
Would you say that you were surprised that it took place the following day?
So, I think I would. I think I would have expected that following that that conversation, the agreement of Mr. Holgate. Obviously, I wasn't cited on. It sounds like there were various conversations to get him to the point of agreeing, but I would have thought that fairly quickly at that stage, a decision would be taken on whether that would be the current primary London Local Authority gold or whether somebody else would take that responsibility.
So we know that LLAG was not in fact activated until the following day, the afternoon of the following day. Did you take any steps to question what was happening?
So I'm not sure I know that. I know that John Barradell went there on the Friday morning. I'm not clear. Yeah, what I know is that on the Friday morning at the 8:30 gold cell, we reflected that we didn't know who was taking on that responsibility. I was given an action to find out. I don't remember anything specific subsequent to that action, but then what we see from the Gold Cell WhatsApp group is that it was reported to the SCG, and so I was informed at 11:25 that John Barradell was the person taking that LLAG role.
Yes, and I imagine at that stage you understood that he was going to take on the role of LLAG, London Gold, under the Gold resolution.
I wouldn't be certain about that. As I say, I wouldn't have had, not been from a local authority, I wouldn't have necessarily had knowledge of the Gold resolution or the scope of it or so forth, which of course is,
right.
Yeah, if I'd had that knowledge, my conversation with Mr. Barradell on the Thursday might have been slightly different, might have been why isn't rather than what should we do.
Right, thank you.
Now, I'd just like to show you this email. It's GOL 50196. It's the email that you sent to Mr. Barradell at 7:48 that evening. And in the first paragraph, the last sentence of that first paragraph, you say it's worth flagging that building a list of people known to live in the tower is something they have apparently so far failed to do. Are you referring to RBKC here?
I am, yes.
Would you agree that the issues on the ground, as they've been referred to, were acute?
I think the evidence before the inquiry shows that they were, yes.
I'd like to next turn your attention to some other emails from your colleague, Miss Strain. And again, I appreciate you were not on these emails. You're not copied into them, but I'd like to see if you can help us with the topics that they do cover. The first is LFB 3067777. This is an email from John Hetherington. Forgive me. This is an email from Mr. Hetherington to his internal LRG colleagues, talking about a conversation with Miss Strain, your colleague at the GLA. It says this: had a call with Emma Strain at the GLA. Given the concerns at City Hall regarding the grip of the situation at RBKC, she has said that if we have further issues to raise, then we can do so through her, which will be passed through David Bellamy anonymously if needed. Obviously, this will be sensitive, so not a wish list of gripes, but just to make you all aware, we have that avenue should it be required. Can you assist us with what the sensitivity was here?
So, I think you could almost regard this as Emma saying, so obviously I'd asked Emma to pull together a list of issues so that I could inform John Barradell for whoever London Local Authority Gold would be, so that they were informed and could address these points. And clearly she's spoken to John Hetherington to try and see are there any other things that we should be aware of. I think the point about sensitivity, I think the analogy might be with a whistleblowing situation, so that if for any reason anybody in London Resilience Group saw things related to their responsibilities towards local authorities and the work they were doing with RBKC, they had an avenue in which those could be raised without them being kind of accused of telling tales or whatever it might be. Just really a desire that we needed to know the facts in order that they could be addressed.
I'd like to take you to another email exchange. That's LFB 3061241. And it's the email in the middle of the page from Miss Strain, 15th of June, at 22:31, and she says this: just worth noting that there are reports from people locally that firefighters have told them it's over 100 fatalities. It's not sustainable to continue the announcements how they've been going. will be a big risk that us, HMG, is that Her Majesty's Government, KNC, Kensington and Chelsea, response is not commensurate with the scale of the tragedy. Did the uncertainty in confirmed fatalities affect the way or impact on the Mayor of London's Voice of London role?
So I think this reflects a situation in which clearly there are proper processes that must be followed in terms of identifying fatalities. And so, we started with a very low number of fatalities, which anybody looking at it could see was very, very low. Because there wasn't, a definitive figure coming from that source, and it's very slow, and because the Casualty Bureau and RBKC operations hadn't said, oh look, right, there are this many people in the tower, right, we know about this many people, we've got a certain number in hospitals, so this gives us a number presumed missing, which might then give you an approximation for the potential range of fatalities. Because that wasn't there, we're in a situation where the communications were very much about the official position, which of course is all we can communicate, but quite rightly people in the community would look at that and say, well, that's self-evidently not right, and we've been failed so completely by authorities. Is this another attempt to downplay the severity of what we saw? And I think that was Ms. Strain's point.
I'd like to turn to the investigations by the Greater London Authority Oversight Committee that we have seen the transcript of your contributions to. It's right to say that there were 3 sessions in respect of that response to the Grenfell Tower fire, one on the 14th of September, the 23rd of November and the 31st of January 2018. Is that right?
I know they had 3 sessions. I don't recall the precise dates.
And on, as we've already established, the 23rd of November of 2017, the committee looked in more detail at the Mayor's role in the response and recovery phases. Is that right?
That would be the session that I and Borough Chief Executives attended, yes.
And going back to that transcript then on the 23rd of November of 2017, that's MOL 6017, going to page 37. You say on the second line, on the first paragraph there, when I came, the second paragraph, for me, there are 3 lessons at a high level to be learnt from Grenfell. The first is that the mutual aid processes were not invoked early enough. They should have been invoked immediately. Clearly, we have, as discussed, the peer review underway to try to stop that issue ever happening again. Just pausing there, dealing with the first issue that you identified there, what do you mean by saying that the mutual aid ought to have been invoked earlier?
So I think there's what I meant at the time, and then I would put an additional comment on it now. What I meant at the time was that the scale of the incident and RBKC's preparedness to respond to it, clearly the incident was beyond their capability, and they really needed to get help in a structured way to put a proper operation in place. The thing I would add to that now is that reading the version of the Humanitarian Assistance Framework 5.0 that was draft but was in use at that time is, I think actually that makes fairly clear that mutual aid should have been invoked. And also, of course, that a humanitarian assistance liaison officer should have been appointed immediately.
You then say the second issue, which the Chair rightly referred to, is that with the best response in the world, pre-existing conditions in the community and the relationship between the community and its council can create a challenge that the theory of a response and recovery operation may not anticipate. We could have a perfect response recovery operation ready to go, but it deals with real people and real situations, and so we have to deal with that. The third high-level area of learning is about the resources that were available to LLAG to deploy and whether we have the right capabilities available to us. we have talked about one example in terms of liaison with affected families. There is a lesson to be learned that was not quite right. You've already alluded to one additional comment that you would make as to what you saw the concerns being. With the passage of time, have you since reflected on any other?
I think that stands up well in terms of the key issues. I think clearly there were some issues about preparedness of boroughs, particularly K and C, and all the processes that should have been there to ensure that boroughs were prepared. But equally, I can understand the challenges in achieving that. But that's, I think, another real area of focus that's needed.
Have you since reflected that maybe there was more that you could have done to ensure that the response in those early days was well managed?
So I think in terms of the specific incident, the GLA as a partner didn't receive the information about what was going on the ground and the failings that there were, in order for us as a partner to raise concerns and try and see to them that they were addressed. And that was for us the fundamental challenge, is the lack of visibility into what was going on.
Having had that reflection, what have you or the GLA done since to rectify that?
So on that specific point, we now have a team, the London Situational Awareness Team, which is a 24/7 function which monitors information about what is going on in London, so both information from resilience partners, but also open source information on the internet, social media and so forth, and maintains relationships with the relevant government machinery in order that we get first early notification of incidents and secondly regular reporting on them. So we have that capacity, and then they're also there, say, when a major incident is declared, in support of our involvement in the SCG in terms of creating an incident log and other such things.
I'd like to move on to another topic, please. In your first witness statement, and we'll have it up in front of us, page 25, paragraph 118, you refer to the role of the Mayor of London, and I'd like to ask you about that. Paragraph 118, the end of the second line, there are clear limits to the Mayor's role in an incident of this nature. Given the Mayor does not have any direct operational responsibility to respond to such an incident, he could not have pursued a more active role in terms of the resilience arrangements post-Grenfell without both breaching agreed protocols and taking responsibility from RBKC, itself a democratically elected public authority, without any legal basis for doing so. Instead, he offered and provided active support to those who had those powers. At paragraph 119, you go on to say, I stated in my evidence before the Oversight Committee, you give the reference for it, that the Mayor had a role in terms of communication in amplifying the messages from those with operational command. This emphasises the fact that the Mayor's primary role is to communicate and provide reassurance to Londoners with regard to an incident of this nature. The existing resilience arrangements do not envisage or permit the Mayor to intervene in terms of coordinating any operational response. Whether that is a satisfactory state of affairs is a matter the Mayor urges the inquiry to consider. In his statement, the Mayor of London, if we can go to that statement, it's MOL 50189, page 24. He says at paragraph 102, at the bottom of the page, The key point is that under the relevant arrangements, it is entirely for the borough in which a civil emergency occurs to decide when to request mutual aid. There was and still is no process which allows a third party to step in and insist that mutual aid is invoked. This means that if a borough is not dealing with an emergency effectively, but for some reason does not ask for help, there is nothing that London Resilience or anyone else can do to take control of the situation. At paragraph 113, he goes on to say, this is in the middle of the paragraph, for the Mayor to have the ability to determine what other aspects of the response and recovery from a civil emergency should be left with the local borough or assigned at a local level.
The London level.
London local level. I would like to explore this a little further with you, if I may, please. A representative of the Greater London Authority was present at all the SCG meetings between the 14th and 20th of June, weren't they?
They were.
The three of you that attended, we've already established, were members of the Mayor of London's Gold Group in response to the Grenfell Tower. That's right, isn't it?
The Gold Cell, yes.
The Mayor's Gold Cell would meet often multiple times a day, would it?
As we felt necessary, yes.
There were also two ministerial meetings, one on the 14th and another on the 15th of June, that you attended both of those meetings, and the Mayor of London dialed into the meeting on the 15th. Is that correct?
No, he dialed into the meeting on the 14th. He didn't attend in any way the meeting on the 15th.
Thank you. You attended both of those meetings, is that right?
Yes.
Would you agree that these meetings were attended by key ministers involved in the response to the Grenfell Tower fire?
I would agree that they were attended by relevant ministers from the government department, the key government departments related to the incident.
And from the 16th of June, those meetings morphed into the Grenfell Tower Recovery Task Force meetings, which took place once a day, the majority of which were chaired by the then Prime Minister. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
You attended 4 out of 5 of those meetings between the 16th to the 20th of June. Is that right?
So I think in that total, you're also including official level meetings, which weren't chaired by the Prime Minister, but by the Deputy National Security Advisor. But yes, other than the meeting on the Saturday, I attended all the others, yes. And
the Mayor of London attended 2 out of 5 of those meetings between the 16th to the 20th of June. Is that right?
Yes, I believe so. Or was it 3? He attended on the Saturday, the Monday, and then possibly we've just slipped outside your time period, the Wednesday.
It was open to you or the Mayor of London to raise any issues in those meetings, wasn't it?
Yes.
You spoke with Catherine Hammond, as we have heard, and you had an opportunity to raise any concerns with her privately, if needed. Is that right?
Yes.
Would you accept that the Mayor of London and his office had access at a very high level to those who could influence the trajectory of the response? As we say, the response obviously is across the partnership, responding to a range of aspects of it. Clearly, we had, said the Mayor spoke to the leader of RBKC. We spent a lot of time trying different officers to speak to RBKC, as the evidence showed, did others, and failed to do so. So we certainly, as partners, had the theoretical ability, but it clearly proved challenging to do so. Would you accept, by virtue of the Mayor of London's presence at key meetings, that there was opportunity to influence?
So, opportunity to influence what?
Opportunity to influence what was happening on the ground.
So there was the opportunity to contribute to the coordinate through the SCG. There was opportunity to be involved in the coordination of what was going on the ground. Clearly, what the SCG wasn't seeing from RBKC is any detail about what was or was not happening, in order that we could say, well, hang on a minute, that's a problem, isn't it?
Do you consider the Greater London Authority and the Mayor's role as having oversight responsibility for London Resilience that they would have had influence and authority in what occurred in the aftermath of the Grenfell Tower fire?
So we touched on this earlier. Our responsibilities for London Resilience are as a Category 1 responder, which, as we said, is a slightly unusual situation because we're not an operational responder, we're a strategic authority. But clearly that was the mechanism that was taken to get us involved in the LRF so that we could take on those responsibilities. From there, as a responder, we have our duties under the Act to cooperate, and they're overwhelmingly referring to the preparedness. It didn't give us any powers to involve ourselves in the response activities of any individual responder.
Do you consider, Mr. Bellamy, that if the existing procedures, and by that I mean the LLAG and mutual aid agreements, had been effectively deployed, there would still remain a need to strengthen the role of the Mayor of London, as you suggest?
So I consider that if the frameworks and protocols in place had been followed perfectly, i.e. at, let's say, 4 a.m. on Wednesday the 14th, RBKC had said, looked at the humanitarian assistance framework, activated that, appointed a suitably experienced and qualified humanitarian assistance liaison officer, and recognised in accordance with the framework that they needed mutual aid. And if through that and discussions with London Local Authority Gold, the appropriate structure for that local authority partnership effort could have been established, then there would have been no need for the Mayor to have any further power, because to be clear, what we absolutely see is, what we saw belatedly happen after Grenfell was local authority colleagues stepping in to help and contribute, because they're emphatically the people with the skill set to do this. The GLA, as a strategic policy authority in general, wouldn't have the people with the right skills to carry out the responsibilities of a local authority, nor would we seek to do so, as the Mayor said in his statement.
I'd like to would you accept that there were a number of reviews that have been undertaken into London Resilience since the Grenfell Tower fire, culminating with the EP 2020 refresh report written by Mark Sawyer? None of those reports suggest a greater role of the Mayor of London, do they?
So, in terms of reviews of London Resilience, you're talking about the Hurd and Ney review related to local authority arrangements, not London Resilience generally. No, that review doesn't suggest a change, no.
Mark Sawyer, when giving his evidence to the inquiry, was asked about the role of the Mayor of London, and we can go to his transcript. It's day 278, page 184. And if I could take you to line 3, please. He's asked the question, what is your view as to the suggestion which is made by the Mayor of London in their opening submissions to this module, that there may be a need for the formal role of the Mayor of London in a civil emergency to be expanded in carefully defined circumstances to require the invocation of mutual aid and appropriate leadership arrangements? In other words, it seems to have some role in the activation of the Gold Resolution. And the answer which Mr. Sawyer gave, I would suggest that may well be legally challenging to find a solution to that. But that said, I believe that by better defining the role of the local authority Gold, by establishing that proactive approach to ensuring that we don't wait to be asked, we actually ask, the local authority Gold asks, do you need help support? By applying that more proactive approach, we will hopefully have addressed the concerns that arose during Grenfell.
Could I respond to that? Is that respectfully, I disagree with him. I think what the evidence shows from Grenfell is that there were lots of people offering aid and assistance to RB and KC, but they were fine, thank you, and didn't wish to avail themselves of it. I think, and that is the challenge. Where I think Mr. Sawyer is right is that legally there is no power and no ability for the mayor currently to step in. Boroughs are sovereign, as we know, but of course, the law can be changed. The question I put is that if you look at what happened, and we've had the discussion about the evening of the 15th, and then obviously matters went on into the 16th, we were reliant on the chief executive of RBKC accepting mutual aid. And if a decision needs to be made in a case where a chief executive is not, through shock or whatever reason, not understanding the scale of what's before them, who is to make that decision? So with Grenfell, it could have been the Chief Executive of the City of London Corporation as Chair of the London Council, but I fail to see what democratic accountability there is in a Chief Executive from one area taking a decision that ultimately, as we saw on the Friday, was taking away, it took away powers from a borough Chief Executive. It could be the Chair of London Councils at the time was the leader of Haringey. But again, what's Haringey got to do with Kensington and Chelsea? And that's where I come back to the Mayor of London as somebody elected by the people of all of London, including KNC.
Yeah, but this is a political question, isn't it? Because what's being suggested is the Mayor should have powers to intervene, overriding the role of the boroughs, or a particular borough. And whether that's desirable or not would seem to me to be a political question.
I'm not sure. I think sometimes, with respect, people describe things as political questions when I wouldn't. I think they're questions. I think, the question is who takes the decision. Yeah, for really important matters such as matters. Like you say, potentially taking the responsibility away from a borough for a period of time and assigning it to somebody else. I'd rather those decisions were taken by somebody democratically elected and accountable.
All right, thank you.
Well, you may have already answered this, but considering all of these matters, do you still share the Mayor's view that the role of the Mayor in civil emergencies should be expanded, as he says in his statement at paragraph 113?
Yes, with appropriate safeguards about the role, thinking about, it could be that it's about receiving perhaps a report or assurance from the strategic coordination group that the Mayor could then consider if need be. I'm not here suggesting a kind of unilateral thing that the Mayor can just, decide whatever the Mayor of the day wishes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Bellamy. Those are the questions I have for you.
Right, thank you. Well, Mr. Bellamy, when we get to this point, we have to have a short break. First, to let Council check that she's asked all the questions she should have asked, and also to allow other people who are following the proceedings from elsewhere to suggest questions that we haven't thought of, that they think perhaps we should put to you. So we're going to take a short break. I'm going to say that we'll come back at 1 o'clock, and at that point we'll see if there are any more questions for you and how we go from there. All right. While you're out of the room, I have to ask you, please, not to talk to anyone about your evidence.
Of course.
As before. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would you go with the usher, please? Miss Malhotra, I said 1 o'clock. I know that's a short time. If you find that you need more time, will you ask the usher to come?
I'm very grateful.
Right. Thank you very much. Would you ask Mr. Bellamy to come back in, please? Right, Mr. Bellamy, well, we'll see if there are any more questions for you. Yes, Ms. Malhotra.
Just one question, Mr. Bellamy. Is there anything you would wish to add to your evidence that is relevant to the inquiry's investigations that I have not covered with you?
I think I'd just like the opportunity to say that obviously mine is an internal-facing role. I just wanted to take this opportunity publicly to say to the survivors, the bereaved local residents, how very sorry I am for what happened. I consider that they were failed not just here and there, but I think the evidence of this inquiry has shown that they were failed by us as a society. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to do whatever we can to ensure that nothing like that ever happens again. I think I've kind of outlined in evidence some of the things that we at the GLA have done since then, that's very important that we all do that and that everybody looks critically at that. I also want to, in that spirit, acknowledge those people who, when RBKC failed, came to help. They didn't have to do so. The only reason that they did was a desire for public service. And I think that's the spirit that all of us need to keep in our minds as we move forward and do all we can to ensure that nothing like this ever happens again.
Well, thank you, Mr. Bellamy. All that's left is for me to thank you for coming today to give your evidence.
Thank you.
And I'd like to add my thanks, Mr. Bellamy, on behalf of the panel as a whole. It's been very interesting to hear what you have to tell us and very helpful to us as well. So thank you very much for giving us your time to come and give evidence.
Thank you.
Thank you very much
for the opportunity.
And now, of course, you're free to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Malhotra. Well, we have another witness, but not until after the break. So we'll stop now for lunch and we'll resume, please, at 2:05. Right? 2:05, please. Thank you.